Hello, and welcome to Take Heart Journey. I hope that you are excited to be here today to make some art and to talk about our very last beatitude, which I cannot believe we have been on such a journey while we've been doing these beatitudes, and it's also been a long time. So I wonder if the place that you're in now is different than the place you were when we started the beatitudes, and I hope that you have a little more of a love or an understanding of this sermon that Jesus gave. Now today our topic is blessed are you who are persecuted. And I was very intimidated by this one, and I couldn't figure out why. But then when I really sat and I thought about it, I realized it's because I am not persecuted. And so as somebody who can make videos, upload them onto the web about Jesus's kingdom and have no kickback in my life in any way, as someone who is free to follow Jesus, to ask questions, and who has never been physically harmed because I follow Jesus, as someone who, if anything, has been hired because I'm a Christian, I felt so out of my league talking about this one because I don't want to take this blessing away from my brothers and sisters around the world who are persecuted. And I don't want to take this blessing away from them and make it my blessing. And so let's talk today about what persecution means, what Jesus was talking about. And I actually think this week is a really good wrap up for us to look at what exactly Jesus's kingdom is. Okay, let's look at the actual verses because there's actually a few on this one. We're in Matthew 5. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And so to me, it looks like persecution is being insulted and having false accusations set against you that are evil because of Jesus. And because this was a big deal that I get this one right, I talked to a woman who lives in the area. She works for the missions at a local church, and her name's Margaret. And I had a whole conversation with her because she's someone who lived in East Congo for a while and who knows Christians all around the world. And so I knew that she would have the global perspective that I was looking for as I think through this beatitude. And so one thing we talked about is that we have all experienced hardships in our life. I have not met a person who wouldn't be angry if you said your life has been easy, because we've all had hardships in our lives. And then some people have things like war, like severe trauma that they have experienced. And I think that in the Beatitudes, there's a place for all of those things, for the weeping, for the poor in spirit, for all of those traumas, the peacemakers, that God has room in the Beatitudes for those hardships in our lives. But I think that persecution is not just talking about these hard things that happen. They're hard things that happen because we have said that we believe in Jesus. And so we made that distinction while we talked in the definition that persecution is not just suffering in our lives, but it's suffering because of Jesus. And so the next thing that I was wondering is, I was thinking through the Beatitudes as we've talked about this as Jesus' self-portrait. Because of course, Jesus was persecuted. Jesus was killed for the very ideas that we have been studying here. And so if we look with curiosity at how Jesus acted when he was persecuted, when he was rejected, when he had all kinds of evil falsely said against him, it tells us what it will look like when Jesus' kingdom is persecuted, what happens. And the one thing that I see is that no matter what, Jesus' enemy was never other humans. He never made it us and them. There was no one group of people that became God's enemy while he lived here on this earth. In fact, even as Jesus was dying on the cross, he looked out and said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." I think that Jesus kept his eye on the real enemy, and I think the real enemy was death. The real enemy was separation from God. And so even in the midst of persecution, the kingdom never arms itself against other humans. And so as I think about the people that Margaret and I talked about who have been kicked out of their families because they have become Christians, or who are not allowed to have Bibles, or who are being jailed or killed because they say that they follow Jesus, as I think about them this week, I do so prayerfully. I prayed for them as I made this art, and I think it's something that we all should, in spirit, be united with our brothers and sisters around the world and not take this blessing from them and focus on what the real definition of persecution is, and be thankful and use our freedom that we do not need to be ashamed to follow Jesus. And why was Jesus persecuted? I think that there are a lot of reasons. I think some people were lied to about what his message was. They truly, with all their hearts, believed Jesus was dangerous, that he was against God. I think there were a lot of people that felt that Jesus challenged their power, because in a world where people kill to run a kingdom, imagine the audacity of Jesus's main message throughout his ministry being about a kingdom that he's in charge of. He was challenging the kingdoms of his world, and that is what is still happening all around the world. It is a challenge when you say that you are going to have a kingdom where the poor in spirit are blessed, where those who mourn are blessed, where the meek are blessed, where those who hunger and thirst for righteousness are blessed, when the merciful are blessed, the pure in heart are blessed, the peacemakers are blessed, and the persecuted are blessed. This is the type of thing that turns society upside down. And so it is a dangerous movement to people in power, even today in the world. And what this means, though, is that when Jesus's people, his kids, are banding together, this is the type of society that they are making together. It is not one where they are taking over the government. It is a group of people who are saying, my allegiance is to Jesus over the country that I live in. And my focus is going to be on all of these people that Jesus blessed, and our kingdom is going to be upside down. And to me, this is exciting. It is a challenge to have studied this and to see how much this is not my life in so many ways, and to yet be thankful that this is the God that we follow, the one who sees us in all of these circumstances, who blesses us, who makes room for us in the kingdom, and who asks for us to make room for others in the kingdom too. So let me tell you what our supplies are today, and let's complete our final beatitude. Okay, the supply list today is short and sweet, and that is purposeful because I hope that you all feel like you have the time and the space to make this. So today you're gonna need your Stabilo All, you're gonna need water and a paintbrush, painter's tape, and then some matte medium and some collage elements. And I limited myself to two pieces of collage items that I had on the side. One of them was a page of a book that I ripped out of an old book, so please don't be mad at me, but it's just like the intro page. And then the other thing I had is this piece of fabric from an old pillow. And so this is all that I had: my art journal, Stabilo All, some matte medium, and two pieces of collage, and I made 4 abstracts today on one art journal page. So I hope that you have fun with this, and I have found that keeping it this simple, that I really only had these 2 options and the Stabilo All, it actually made it easier for me, and I loved the crisp, minimalist result that came out of it. So let's get started and let's make our art for today. All right, here are all the supplies that I am going to use in this video, and also right off screen I have a cup of water and a paintbrush for my Stabilo All. So step 1, what I like to do when I'm going to make some abstracts in my art journal is I use painter's tape, and what this does is it adds a very satisfying last step to the creation of your abstracts, because it means that you can be as messy as you want, and then when you take this tape off at the end, your abstracts are framed by the white of your art journal. And so I also love creating 4 at a time because it helps me to just feel really loose and more inspired to do whatever I want. And honestly, today is all about a bunch of the things that I do that add instant inspiration to my art. And so you already know my favorite is the Stabilo All. And so there's some weird paint marks that are already on this page from another page by accident, and they inspired me. So I am using those to get started, making some random marks with my Stabilo, and then wetting a paintbrush and just having so much fun. This is a process where I can pretty quickly get lost in what I'm doing, and you can write, you can paint with the paintbrush, and depending on how hard you've pressed or how much of the Stabilo All you've left on the page, you can make black, you can make gray, you can make a really, really light gray. And so I just make some quick marks to get me inspired, and then start playing around with them and just see what happens. And so once I get going, I just make whatever marks I can think of, and this is a very easy and quick way for me to get in the flow. So step 1, tape down your paper for your 4 mini abstracts, and then use your Stabilo All and some water to make some cool marks that you are now going to respond to for the next step of our abstract making. Now that I've made my marks with the Stabilo All and already loving what is on the page, I am going to start ripping up my collage pieces. So first up, I have this page from a book, and I am, as you can see, just ripping up tiny little scraps and moving them around until it feels right. And that's honestly the best way I can describe this, that when it hit the right place on the page, it was like, that is where that belongs. And I hope you can see how controlled I'm being just with the amount. I am truly only putting one small piece of this on each abstract, and that helps me to continue to give these abstracts the feel that I want them to have. And as much fun as I'm having making this abstract, I also was using this time to really think through this week's beatitude. And I know that often we promise people our prayers or our thoughts and prayers, and actually sitting down and taking the time to do it can be really hard. And so that's part of what I used my art for, is a time to actually allow myself to think about the people in the world that are persecuted for Jesus, and to just take some time to pray and then also to listen as I thought through this beatitude. And how amazing would it be if our whole community did that and actually spent some time praying for those who are persecuted and for this blessing that Jesus promised them. I am applying these little pieces of paper with matte medium, and I'm being careful because if you remember, the Stabilo All can be reconstituted, so when it gets wet it's going to move around again. And so I actually start doing that on purpose with the matte medium and going over some of the marks that I made, because what this does is it will set it and it will make it permanent, because now there's a layer of that matte medium seal on top of it. And so whatever I do from here forward will not disturb any of the areas that I have touched with the matte medium. And it's also, you could do this in the very first step. You could use matte medium instead of water, because it's still really fun to play with to move the Stabilo All ink around. And now here I have a piece of fabric I cut off the front of an old pillow that had seen its last day, and I love the way that this tatters and just falls apart so quickly when it is cut. And so I use all of those wispy edges in each piece, and I had the same experience where I would cut a piece of cloth and I could hold it up and just immediately figure out, no, it does not go there, it doesn't go there, it does go here. And so you'll see me just move it around and until I find the spot that it looks just right. And I'm using matte gel to glue this down just because it's a little thicker to glue down the fabric, but matte medium would work for this too. After you have both types of your collage paper down, it is time to finish each little square. And so there's a few more marks that I want to make with the Stabilo awl, and then in some areas I'm also going to add just a tiny bit of gold paint, which they didn't even need, but I do like the little bit that they bring to each abstract. And so I'm just looking at each one and seeing what they need, if anything, and continuing to use that self-control that I've used with each little piece of collage and just not overdoing it. And I think that the result for me is so beautiful, and the process was beautiful as well. So I hope that you have the chance to make these really simple little abstracts and enjoy the satisfaction of peeling the tape off at the end. I want to show you one last step that I did, and I found this really cool frame at Michael's that you can float your art in the glass, and you could do this with these abstracts or honestly with any art journal page, as I will show you in a minute. So I cut these abstracts up. They weren't even the exact right sizes or anything, but I figured it out and I picked my 3 favorite and I put them onto the glass and slid them back into the frame, cleaned off my fingerprints, which I ended up doing that so many times. And when you put it into the frame again, it's a really, really beautiful finished piece. The best part is that I had art on the other side of this page too, and that art also looks amazing in its own way. Thank you for engaging with this Beatitude and every Beatitude with me, and I hope you enjoy the art this week.